Good afternoon. Today we are starting a new benchmark booklet called Tales to Live By. A tale is another word for a story. So this title could actually be named Stories to Live By. The word tale and story are synonyms, which mean the same thing. Tales to live by. So if you live by something, that means you have something guide your life. Okay. So if this title of this book is called Tales to Live By, that it means that they are stories that you can guide your life by. You can learn lesson from the stories and say, you know what, that's a good way to live my life, and that's how I'm going to live it. So let's take a look at some such stories that have been around for quite a while. This question says, what can different cultures teach us? A culture is a group of people that have same type of food, clothing, customs, traditions, maybe the same religion. That's what a culture is. And the stories that we'll see in this booklet are from different cultures, which are many times from different countries. And they all have good lessons that they can teach us. So let's take a look at these pictures and try and figure out what these stories are and what they can teach us. You might be familiar with some of these stories. This picture looks like it's from the story Pinocchio, where Geppetto the carpenter created a little wooden puppet boy. Well, the puppet somehow came to life and eventually realized he was a puppet and he really wanted to be a real boy. So he went out on this quest or this adventure to try to become a real boy, and he got into quite a bit of trouble. And Geppetto warned him not to try to become a real boy, but just be happy being a puppet. But Pinocchio didn't listen. He got into trouble, like I said. But then he learns in the end that it is better to be happy with who you are. And I think that's a good lesson that this story can teach us. Just be happy with who you are. And that's actually the same lesson that this story right here can teach us. This story is called The Ugly Duckling. It's about a swan that's born in the same nest as some ducklings. So he thinks he's a duckling, but he's like, gee, I don't look like these ducklings. And these ducklings are certainly letting him know, boy, you're not like us. In fact, you're rather ugly because you don't look like us. Well, in the end, he finds out that he's actually a swan, not a duckling. And he says, hey, I'm a swan, and I'm pretty proud of that. So, this is another story where we're taught to just appreciate who we are and to love ourselves for who we are. Now, this story you might recognize. This one, this picture is from a story called A Boy Who Cried Wolf. This boy thought it was really funny to get the townspeople here all upset and anxious when he would scream out, help, there's a wolf, he's about to eat my sheep. Come help me. And the townspeople would come running. And then the boy would go, ha ha, there's not really a wolf. I was just bored and I wanted to see if you would come and and rescue me. Well, after he did this a few times, the townspeople were starting to get really angry, as you can see here by their faces. And then one day, there was a wolf that really did come and eat the sheep, and the boy was crying for help and crying for help. And the townspeople said, no, we're not going to help you because you've tricked us too many times. And then, well, guess what? The boy's sheep were all gone because he thought he was going to be funny and trick people. So the lesson we can learn from this tale is Don't trick people because then they're not going to take you seriously. So let's look at a couple of short stories and see if we can figure out the lesson that they have to teach us. We're going to start with this first one, The Best Idea. I'm going to have the computer read it to you, and then let's talk about it.
Shared reads 1 and 2. Remember to imitate as you read.
The best idea. Once there was a meeting of the mice to discuss their problem with the cat. The cat was so sneaky that he could pounce before the mice knew he was around. One mouse had an idea.
Let's have a nice nap. Then we will hear him coming and have time to steal him.
The mice cheered and agreed it was the best idea they had ever heard. Then Old Mouse asked a question. Who will put the bell on the cat? No one answered. It was not such a good idea after all.
Okay, so this great idea came up in this meeting of the mice. They were being harassed by the cat. The cat obviously wanted to eat them because that's what cats do. And one mouse came up with the idea, let's hang a bell around the cat's neck. Oh, awesome, everyone said. But who's going to do it? And of course, no one wanted to do it because if you tried to do such a thing, the cat would eat you. So what lesson can we learn from this story? I think the lesson we can learn is a good idea is not a good idea unless you're willing to do it, right? So let's write that down as the lesson that we can learn from this story. Let's see, let's change to black, and there we go. Okay. So, a good idea, not a good idea, unless you're willing to do it. They better come up with another idea. All right, so let's look at this one, The Size of Kindness. A little glitchy today. Okay, let's have the computer read it.
Size of kindness. Long ago, ant and elephant were both the same size, which was about the size of a horse. One day, they found a girl who was hurt and could not walk. Please, may I ride on your back? She asked. Ant complained. No, that would not be comfortable for me. Elephant, however, helped the girl onto his back and took her home. As a reward, the girl's father gave Elephant and Ant each a gift based on the size of their kindness. Elephant became large and mighty, while Ant became small.
Ring! I love that tone. Okay. So Ant and Elephant were the same size once upon a time. Not really. This is not a real story. But that's what the story says. And they found a girl who was hurt and needed a ride on one of their backs so that she could get home. Ant said, no, that would not be comfortable for me. But Elephant said yes. And so the girl's father rewarded Elephant by making him bigger in size to match his big, big heart. And he made the ant smaller in size to match his small, very puny heart. So what could we learn from this? We could learn that it's always better to be helpful, right? Even if you don't become a giant by being helpful, it's still, well, makes your heart bigger. That means it makes you happy. And it's always just better to help others. So let's write that down. Oops. It's always better to help others. Very simple lesson. It's a very simple truth, but it's still a good truth, isn't it? There we go. So there you have it. Keep in mind that whenever you read a story, there are some things you can learn from it, and that's what makes a story so enjoyable sometimes. Not because it entertains us, but also because it could teach us a lesson that we could use in our lives.